Regarding your statements regarding Mr Palmer's policy on refugees,
yes,
I have Mr Palmer's quote that pretty much said it. Do you know how many refugees are accredited according to the United Nations in the world?
off the top of my head, I'm sorry, I don't know.
If I told you it was 42 million, would you accept that figure?
If you say that's a fact, then I will.
And if, for argument's sake, any of those people were free to get on an aeroplane and come to Australia, what might that lead to?
Well, I would think that if we have genuine refugees, then they will consider not only coming to Australia, but they will consider other nations as well. I know that this policy that Clive has stated is not a unique one. It's a policy which is used in America at this time, and they are handling refugees much better than we are in Australia. Our record is that people actually try to come here by hook or crook, and because they come out on these shifty vessels, a lot of them end up dead, and we don't want to have that. We don't also want to have people suffering in jails. Now, there's a deterrent factor. If they are truly refugees, and I don't know if the number you quoted are refugees or just asylum seekers or whatever, but if they're truly refugees, then Australia Australians have got big hearts, and they want to do the right thing.
Well, what if I said to you, how about none? Zero. Absolutely.
To come in?
Yeah, none. Well, why do you think the Palmer United Party would argue against the principle of none? In other words, no right way, no wrong way, no legitimate, no illegitimate, no they're refugees, no they're economic migrants, but just none. Why do you think the Palmer United Party would argue against that proposition?
I can only give my opinion, and my opinion is that I think that Clive Palmer and his members of his party are compassionate, and they need to hear what the facts are. If the facts are that these people, these refugees, have their lives at risk in their own countries, then he doesn't want people to be slaughtered in their own countries. So that's why none is not an option for Clive Palmer.
Well, that's why I won't be voting for him. There you go. Thank you.
Do you want to...
Oh, okay. Yeah, Victor.
Yeah, Clive obviously tries to pass himself off as a patriot, you might say. Clearly, I believe that he's for the 457 visas. I know plenty of Australians that can't get work because Clive would rather have people here on 457 visas. Can you give me a reason why he would call himself a patriot instead of giving Australians jobs and saying, no, we don't care about 457 people coming from wherever?
Again, I can't answer for Clive. I can only say what I think he might say, because I don't know exactly what he will say.
Oh, but it's a party issue, not just Clive. It's not necessarily about what Clive is on about, you know.
It might be, but at the moment we're really pushing those 5 major issues, and those peripheral issues haven't been discussed or debated in the party room. So I can only guess, and I really don't want to guess at this stage till I get it from the man himself or when we debate it in caucus.
Thanks. Oh,
yeah, that's all right. Let him go.
Mr. Don
Caruana.
The first policy seems to address corruption in government. Well, that's one aspect of corruption in government, one I didn't know about, but from my own point of view, I went to university, used to spend a lot of time in university, and how it works at university is the best and brightest young people in Australia go to university, and they work their guts out and spend all their money and several years of their lives, and they get handed a piece of paper at the end of their degree course, and then they go out looking for a job, and that bit of paper is pretty much worthless to them. They're exploited when they get out. If they can get a job, they're exploited when they get out there. What I'm getting at is there's endemic and pathological corruption throughout the public service, federal, state and local in Australia. You're addressing one issue. Will you continue with that and look at the endemic and cultural and pathological corruption in various government departments and agencies?
Well, the point you've hit on is that Australians are hurting, and like I said from the onset, we are listening to Australians, and we will do something for Australians. Now, we want Australians to have jobs, so we will address those issues. But at this moment in time, we haven't discussed those issues, so I can't really give you an answer one way or another. But we understand Australians are hurting. We understand we want Australians to have jobs. We want them to have job security. We want them to have a good way of living. So, yes, I will be addressed, but at this moment in time, the nuts and bolts haven't been worked out. We haven't been elected yet. Now, once we get into office, the wheels, the cogs will start rolling, and yes, we will address those issues because we are there for the people.
You're not a Queenslander, and neither am I, but I recall that Kevin Rudd, when the Labor Party got in Queensland, the State Labor Party, I think they sacked the entire public service up there, the Jobielki Petersons. Does anyone recall that? Is that correct? Kevin Rudd sacked the whole public service. They were paid to do nothing while they employed more people. Well, that's the actions he took when he was faced with a public service that was loyal to another political party because they'd all been appointed by another political party.
I understand. We are not Kevin Rudd, and like I said, we are sympathetic to Australia and Australians. So, put us in that same situation, and you'll see what we'll do. We won't stab anyone in the back. We're not there to do that. We're there to support Australia, and we will lead them to have a better life. That's what we want.
All right, thanks. So, Anna's got a question.
Hi, I'm sorry, you may have addressed this earlier. I wasn't here for your speech. What about natural health? Have you got a policy on natural health at all, or was that not part of it too?
What do you mean?
Well, basically, the governments at the moment now are trying to get rid of naturopaths and not allow them to even prescribe drugs. You know, the naturopathic drugs. Has the party got a policy on that you're aware of?
Well, basically, at this moment in time, we have 5 major policies.
I wasn't here, so I don't know what they are.
And it doesn't address natural health. But the rest of the policies are very similar to the Liberal National Party.
So what are the 5, if you don't mind? I know it's been repeated, but what are the 5?
You've got a handout there in front of you, so
You can't tell me just quickly, just what?
Yeah, well,
just
the first one is that we're going to stop lobbyists. The second one is that we're going to ban carbon tax. The third one is we're going to stop the leaky boats coming in. The fourth one is that we're going to give monies back to. We're going to get monies back from the minerals from Western Australia and Queensland. So we're going to sort of do all our processing in Australia rather than just sending our raw materials overseas and then paying for the product to come back. And the fifth one is that that wealth that is made in a region so all the tax that's made from the wealth in the region, some of it is going to go back to that region.
Right. Thank you.
So they're the 5 major policies.
Did you have a question, Tom?
I've got another question. No one else has got one. No, if you've got a question.
I've got another one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I suppose a lobbyist is, of course, someone that's promoting their own agenda.
Or someone else's agenda, and they pay a top dollar to do
Is
that.
not Clive really the same? Because abolishing the carbon tax would help his bottom line, creating mineral wealth that help his bottom line, and putting the wealth back into certain areas of the country is another thing for Clive Palmer as well. So is he not just another lobby group?
He's not a lobby group, but you are right. He will benefit. He is an Australian, and all Australians will benefit from these policies. Not just Clive. He is one Australian that will benefit. because he'll be paying cheaper electricity like we all will be paying cheaper electricity. With mineral wealth, yes, he'll be benefiting, but we were concerned about jobs for Australians. It will create jobs for Australians. This idea of bringing wealth back into the areas that create the wealth, Clive will benefit, but everyone else will benefit too, because those tax dollars will go back into the areas and it will build up their infrastructure, which will create more jobs and will make that community much better off as well. So yes, you're right, Clive will benefit, but he's just one Australian in the 20 billion population in Australia that will benefit as well.
Do you have a policy at all, like the government has just now allowed the Shell and Caltex to close their refineries? We are completely now at odds with overseas. We don't have any, we produce our own oil, but we don't have a refinery anymore. So is there a policy on refineries that we stop the Caltex from having, if they're going to close the refinery, they can't sell in here?
We are a new party. We're just starting off.
There's nothing on.
So at the moment, I'm not aware that there's anything that specific.
Did I understand correctly that Clive's one policy is that instead of exporting iron ore to China, establishing here in Australia a steel manufacturing process?
Correct.
So instead of shipping iron ore to China and they create steel out of that and we buy back the steel, we create it right here.
That's right, and it costs more money to buy the steel, so we're going to create mineral wealth in Australia.
That's fantastic.
So he wants value added?
Well, he does, and we're going to create these areas in New South Wales, Victoria and South Australia.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
so you'll build a new BHP mill up at Newcastle, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't discussed the intricacies of that, but what we're looking at is giving Australians jobs and also keeping the wealth here and not paying overseas for something that we can do ourselves.
That would create tens of thousands of jobs and leaves those visa issues out of proportion.
I know we have in Australia a compulsory at the federal level preference system. So all parties are obliged to do this, obviously, or their votes are invalid. Where does the preferences of the Palmer United Party go? Say in your local electorate first and then in the Senate, where do they go?
That's an important question. The truth of the matter is that the Governor-General hasn't given out writs yet, so we just don't know who the candidates are for each electorate. Once the writs have been put out, once we know who the candidates are, then we will decide as a group, as a party, we will decide where the preferences will go. So it's just premature to do it now. We haven't done it now. We don't even know when the election is. Does anyone know when the election is?
Cameron will drag this out further and further and further, I believe, so it'll give him time to bash up Tony.
They'll have it early.
No, I think it'll let it longer.
It's all, we don't have a crystal ball, do we?
Well, Kevin Rudd ain't going to do what the media's telling him to do, or what the Liberal Party want him to do.
Right. Thanks, Jim. That was a good question. Don?
You're going to scrap the carbon tax.
Yes.
But there are other taxes out there that really hurt the poorer people in the community. The GST. If someone has to spend 100% of their income on purchases, they're getting taxed on 100% of their income. So it's a tax. The GST is a tax on poor people more than rich people, because rich people don't spend 100% of their income to live. So will it be progressively? Will the party be progressively looking at taxes to write off, to cut out, that adversely affect the poorer members of the community?
Well, we need to look at the big picture, and so that's only part of the big picture. Once we're elected, then we will know what is truly happening budget-wise. Because at the moment, the government, they have everything in their own secret room, and they don't tell anyone what's going on till another party comes in, and they know what the truth is. They know what monies, what monies are spent where, how much money is in the budget, and what is happening. I can't give you an answer on that because I don't know exactly what the government has or has not got in its Australian coffers. You hear time and time again when a new party is elected, they say, well, we didn't know this was there or this wasn't there, and so they change things around. So I'm not going to just make up something just because it sounds good and to get you on side. I want to talk from fact, and until we get the facts, then I really can't answer that question.
If you're not confident about what the assets and income of the Australian federal government are at the moment, based on what you've learned, does that mean that you don't really know what the Australia's debts are either? That information is not fully disclosed?
I'm saying that I'm not 100% sure what we're going in for, but we've got a pretty good idea, and we're going on that idea at the moment with our policies. We will look into further things like the GST when we're elected, because then we've got that opportunity, and we've also got the facts in front of us. At the moment, we don't have all the facts. We have some facts, and we can make some assumptions on those facts. I can't give you the answer on the GST because that is only one component of the big picture.
Thanks, Don. Anna?
You may have addressed this earlier. Caucus, you mentioned caucus. Who actually is in the caucus of the pub company?
Well, obviously,
and how many from each state would be part of it?
Well, obviously, everyone who's been elected to.
At the moment, I'm saying.
At the moment, it's all the candidates. We keep in contact with each other. We're always debating and sharing ideas. Mr. Palmer his intention, and he's almost there, I'm sure, is going to have a member in each electorate in Australia, both in the lower house and the upper house.
Sorry, I was meaning for policy. Has he just got a small little group from each state, or is it just from?
We are. Obviously, he has an executive group.
Yes, that's what I was asking.
He has an executive group, but he also throws ideas through us because, we're always in communicate with each other.
So, are all the executives from Queensland, or the majority of them all from Queensland? And at the moment, I know it'll change once the election's over.
He's got voices from all states and territories.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Brian, from down the back.
A great number of the misfortunes of our country at the moment are caused by the fact that we're signatories to a lot of United Nations treaties, most of which were done all by regulation and by passing through Parliament. Isn't it possible that those can be unsigned just as quickly as what they were signed? Because our country went from being, we're going to assimilate migrants, it's all of a sudden you find you're living in a world where it's multiculturalism, and there's a whole lot of other, policy things that come from the bad parts of the United Nations. They talk about the people dying on boats and things like that, and the terrorists that they go through. The war's been over 60-odd years ago. If the other countries can't get their places in order by then, we can't do anything to save them. My thought is that we have to become more nationalistic and not so soft-hearted towards other people. Every night on television there's pictures of little starving children in India or Bangladesh or whatever. sort of have a certain compassion, but you've also got a loyalty to your own country. And I think we just have to harden our hearts and just try and go back. We had a very good country, had a lot of faults, but now everybody wants to reform it. Whereas I think it's just like a factory. You don't go in and change everybody and sack everybody before you know what's happening. I think we're missing a very big chance.
I understand what you're saying, and what we need to do is listen to our people in the electorate. So each candidate needs to listen to what everyone's saying, not just a few people here and there, and then get those ideas, and then say, go up to caucus and say, look, this is what we believe in, because this is what our electorate believes in, and then we'll go to bat for that. So we need to not just hear one or two people. One or two people may be passionate over a few things. We're not really concerned about one or two people. We need to see what the majority of our electorate are concerned about. And yes, if they have the same concerns, we will go that way. And obviously we need to look at the legal implications and see legally how we need to do things. So it's not just a case of saying, yes, it was done one way, we've got to undo it and do it another way. We need to firstly see that we've got the majority of people thinking that way, because we're there for the people. We're not there for ourselves or for the minority. And then we need to see, again, how to do it. We need to find out the legal ways to do what the people want. So if what you say is what the majority want, then that's the way we'll go. If the majority say, well, we're compassionate and we don't want people to die, we don't want to risk more people dying, then we'll listen to that. So it's not what I'm thinking individually. I am the voice of the Barton electorate. I'm not there for myself or for just individuals, but for the majority.
All right, thanks. I think I had another question.
Yeah.
It's basically what you said about the refugees of not being in camps and things. I was a refugee to this country. We were in camps for many years, and it never did us any damage at all. As long as you're with a loving family, it doesn't matter. We realised that we weren't in the position that we had no rights until they were given to us. And I think the majority of real refugees have the same feelings.
I think the main concern about incarcerating refugees is that there are small children.
I was a small child. I was a small child, and I can assure you, I've asked my other friends who are my same age, and none of us were damaged at all. If you're with loving parents, they don't care. Children don't care where they are.
That's right. I can't answer for you. Obviously, it works for you, but I do understand that the medical view of this is not the same. My understanding is that the medical view is that this will damage the children.
Because the medical people have not been in that situation. People that have been in that situation don't care as long as the kids are with loving parents.
And that's one issue. The other issue is that they're risking people coming here on these boats that are really not seaworthy, and people are dying. You weren't here when I mentioned, I don't know if you were here, if I mentioned that even as far back as last Tuesday night, 4 people died.
Well, it's happening in Europe as well, when they're going from Africa to, on the boats. It's happening when people hop up to the trains to get to London, so yes.
Is that why Clive's building the Titanic too? Because then that way you can just sail in Denver and just ship them wholesale, baby, straight into Darwin. You have flights out, you probably get, on the Titanic too, you probably get 10,000 on board. At least.
I think, and again, it's my thoughts.
Money Clive could make out of that puppy. If he was more patriotic, as what he says, he'd actually have Titanic 2 built in Australia. Wouldn't he? Really? If he was half as patriotic as me, he'd get it built in Australia.
You're just picking on a few aspects. If you look at the big picture, Clive Palmer has done a lot for Australia already. He's done a lot for Australia already.
So is Bob Hawke. So is what
Bob Hawke did for Australia.
Excuse me.
It's only about perception.
Okay, Victor, that's
It's all about perception.
Questions.
That's what it's all about.
Alright.
Questions, yes.
Answering
Yeah,
questions.
Clive built Jurassic Park.
Questions, yes.
Right. I might ask a question. So as we know at the moment, you know, like you haven't got the figures, but our debt is sky at all-time highs, and our the government is spending it, you know, at a rate never before seen. So the question is, how did you see us, you know, coming out of that deficit? But is it as a result of these 5 policies?
As a result of most of the policies, I see that we can come out of debt because we are going to create more money by processing minerals here. We're going to create more jobs. We're going to create more money by helping businesses because we're going to give back to businesses from the tax dollar, so they'll be able to make more money for themselves, which means whatever they're being taxed will come back into the coffers that we can distribute to all Australians. So money will come back using most of our policies that I've explained a bit earlier on.
Sorry, I just want to ask another question then. So it sounds a lot around minerals. Is our mineral resources infinite? Like how long? We're hearing at the moment that our resources are on the, you know, I think
I heard on the radio.
we've reached our peak. So if,
that we got about.
it's like we were living on the ship at the back of the sheep once, you know. Back
Yeah,
in
now we're living off the back
Yeah.
of the miner.
the, yeah. So
But no,
I just hope we
I
can
heard on the
keep
radio
long
that
enough
there's
for those.
60 years of
That's why
iron ore and 90 years of coal
Oh,
at
so-
the rate
yeah.
we
So
export.
we got plenty. We got plenty.
Well, no, we got 60 years worth of stuff
It's not
at that rate we're exporting.
They'll see everybody out in this room.
Yeah, but what you're saying is
Well, this is not a
interesting.
vision.
The point is, whether it's going to be exhausted or not, we are not doing it the most viable way. What we're doing is we just send it overseas for pittance, and then we're paying for the end product top dollar. If we can do what we're doing here, then we're going to be much better off.
Well, I just want to say, look, I comment on that particular issue there, especially with the mining. Now, I come from Denmark, but Sweden, who makes some of the best steel in the world,
Yeah.
they haven't got that much. They got steel and coal and all that, but they do it themselves. And I came out here 52, nearly 53 years ago. I couldn't understand why they're standing all the way. Why don't they got the coal? It's just a matter of making them a railroad across from Western Australia, and you just transport it across.
Yeah. And Clive Palmer can
And
make it
that
happen.
was
Yeah, Clive Palmer
53
can
years
change
ago,
that
I
all
thought
around.
that.
He can make it happen.
Yeah, I reckon good. He should.
Thanks,
But
John. Thank you.
I was just going to say.
Your questions, no statements.
Yeah, no, it says here about, of course, Clive wanted to create mineral wealth here and say, we'll build another, steel mill up at Newcastle, 2 blast furnaces chugging away. Is Clive Palmer going to look at investing into that, or should it be state-owned?
Investing as a member of Parliament?
Oh, no,
or as
no,
member as an individual?
investing to build a new steel mill, say, in Newcastle.
Investing
So to be able to process
as
the
a
minerals.
government investing in that?
Well, yeah, whatever. Would Clive take that on as a private thing, or should it be state-owned, like government?
Again, I would only speculate, and I can't answer that
Oh, okay.
because Clive hasn't told me.
Fair enough.
But whatever, again, the intention is to do the right thing by Australia, and whatever that would be, we will determine it at that stage.
I don't think Clive's going to own every company in Australia. I think he's going to set up infrastructure and the policies and business to be able for individual companies.
But his intention
do
is
that.
not to own everything in Australia.
No.
The thing is, he's worked in the body corporate. So his ideas, his mentality is as a businessman. So if there are any conflicts of interest, he knows that he needs to take himself away from that. And that's what he would do. He's not there for any selfish reasons like you seem to be thinking. He's already made it. He's got enough money. Money doesn't concern him. What he's concerned about is to make Australians more comfortable and for all Australians to have a better life. It's not about Clive. He will be there using his business acumen to do the right thing by the country. And we are all there to support him.
That may be not necessarily how the electorate view Clive Palmer. They'll probably just see him as just a self-interested billionaire that's, you know, got heaps of money to set up a political party.
Well, I think it's just explain the question.
Well, you know.
Victor, Brian?
At the present moment, we live in a very corrupt society where it goes right from the local police and up to the Governor General. What does Mr. Palmer plan to sort of bring things? How can we operate in such a corrupt atmosphere?
What you say is a sad truth. Obviously, we have to work in the atmosphere that we're given, but we will ensure that we are not corrupt. And by example and by determination, hopefully we can change things around. Obviously, there needs to be policies to minimise and to eliminate corruption, but we're starting from the ground root. And the ground root is that we are clean and that we are going to bring a purity to politics.
Good, thanks. Yes, Anna?
I know you've only got a few policies, I'm aware of that, you can't reveal them all anyway, you know, until closer to time. Is there a policy, does he have a policy on selling the farm to foreigners?
Not that I know.
Okay, and also about when you said about the party officials should not be lobbyists, what's actually a party official? What class of, is that an ex-politician? That may not be official.
It may, well, someone who's in hierarchy in a party.
Right.
So they've got the year to...
an ex-minister?
Well, definitely an ex-minister,
Yes,
that's what I mentioned.
He may not be a party official though,
But an ex-minister may be part of a lobby group,
yes.
and then that lobby group has the year of the front benches.
No, I understand that. I was just checking, asking whether it was him, that's all. Thank you.
Oh, good. So, does that just about wrap it up? Anybody got any for the local area, maybe?
No,
Has your party considered referendum on some of these contentious issues, like the contention issues with the boat people or selling Australia? Wouldn't it pay to, like Sweden does, referendum? Your party not interested in doing that type of thing?
Our party is interested in listening to the people. Whether that means having a referendum, whether it means that the each electorate, the candidate from each electorate, goes out and asks the questions to their electorate. We are in a really great situation at the moment with computers, because most people have computers, and there are ways that we can approach people to give their opinion back to us, to give what they think back to us. So either we can do it electronically, or we can do it the old way, which is expensive, a referendum, but we're going to do it democratically, because we're there to listen to people. So if that's what, if we have concerns, then we'll go back to the people and find out what they want, and find out what, and then figure out a solution to the problems that they give us.
In answer to that, every other politician goes around and says the same thing as what you're saying, that you're going to take it back to the party that the people want.